In quiet neighborhoods, power goes wrong.
There are moments in life when time doesn't slow down. It shatters. 1 second, you're planning a future. The next, you're fighting to keep it alive. My pregnant wife stepped outside our home for barely 2 minutes, and in that tiny window of time, a woman with a clipboard, a twisted sense of authority, and uncontrollable rage turned our world upside down. She thought she was enforcing rules. She didn't know she had just committed a crime that would shake an entire system. Sunday mornings were sacred to us. No meetings. No security detail hovering nearby. No speeches. No headlines. Just quiet. The early sunlight filtered through the curtains, filling our living room with warmth. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, reading through reports that could easily wait until Monday. From the kitchen, I could hear my wife humming softly. Aisha was 7 months pregnant, and everything she did now carried a gentle rhythm, slow steps, careful movements, and frequent pauses where her hand would rest on her belly. She smiled more these days. Not because life was easy, but because hope was growing inside her. "I'm going to water the plants," she said, holding up the small watering can. "Don't stay out too long," I replied, half smiling. "I won't," she laughed. 2 minutes, promise." Neither of us knew how much those words would haunt me. We lived in a gated community known for its strict homeowners association. On paper, it was about order and cleanliness. In reality, it was about power. Residents whispered about fines, warnings, and harassment. People avoided confrontation. Most stayed silent. And at the center of it all was one woman. The HOA Karen. She was infamous. Middle-aged, always carrying a clipboard, always watching, always waiting for someone to break a rule, real or imagined. She believed authority belonged to her. Aisha stepped onto the porch, inhaling deeply as she watered the plants. That's when a sharp voice cut through the calm. "Excuse me." Aisha flinched and looked up. Karen was walking toward her briskly, heels clicking angrily against the pavement. "You can't water plants at this hour," Karen snapped. "It's against HOA regulations." Aisha didn't argue. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said gently. "I'll stop right now." She turned back toward the door, thinking that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Karen stepped closer. "I'm talking to you," she said sharply. Aisha paused, hand on the door handle. "Yes," she asked politely. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You people always think rules don't apply to you," she said. "I don't tolerate disrespect." Aisha felt uncomfortable now. "I wasn't being disrespectful," she replied softly. "I'm pregnant. I didn't know about the timing." Karen laughed, a short, cold sound. "Pregnancy doesn't excuse rule breaking," she said. "If I let one person slide, everyone will." The word everyone carried something ugly beneath it. Aisha shifted her weight. "I really don't feel well," she said. "I just want to go inside." Karen blocked her path. "Not until you acknowledge the violation," she said, tapping her clipboard aggressively. Aisha's hand instinctively moved to her belly. "Please," she whispered. "You're scaring me." Karen's expression didn't soften. Something about her demeanor changed. Her jaw tightened. Her breathing quickened. And then she reached into her handbag. Inside, I was still on the couch, unaware. I glanced at my phone, thinking Aisha was taking longer than usual. Then I heard it. A sound I will never forget. A scream, sharp, broken, and filled with terror. My heart dropped. I ran. I burst through the front door. Aisha was on the ground. Karen stood a few steps away, frozen, her face pale. Something metallic glinted near her feet. For a second, my mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Then Aisha reached toward me. Her voice was shaking. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Please, the baby." I dropped to my knees beside her, hands trembling. Neighbors began pouring out of their homes. Someone shouted to call the police. Another screamed for an ambulance. Karen broke the silence. She refused to follow HOA rules, she said loudly, as if defending herself to an invisible audience. She provoked me. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. All I could see was my wife's face, pale, terrified, trying to stay strong for our unborn child. I pulled out my phone and called emergency services. My voice shook as I gave the address. Those minutes felt endless. I held Aisha's hand, whispering to her, telling her to breathe, telling her everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure myself. Karen paced back and forth. She wasn't crying. She wasn't apologizing. She was angry. Angry that things had gone too far. Sirens cut through the air. Paramedics rushed in, taking control. They asked questions quickly, professionally. Aisha was placed on a stretcher. Before they wheeled her away, she grabbed my sleeve. "Please don't leave me," she whispered. "I'm right here," I said, forcing calm into my voice. I followed the ambulance, my mind racing with fear and fury. Hospitals have a way of draining all sound. The bright lights. The smell of disinfectant. The quiet urgency. Doctors rushed Aisha into emergency care. I was told to wait. I sat alone in a plastic chair, hands clasped, replaying every second in my head. If I had gone outside with her. If we hadn't moved here. If rules hadn't mattered more than people. After what felt like hours, a doctor approached me. "She's stable," he said carefully. "The baby is stable too, but we'll need to monitor closely." My chest finally loosened enough for me to breathe. "Can I see her?" I asked. "Soon," he replied. A police officer approached me next. He was respectful but cautious. "Sir, we need to take your statement." I nodded. He asked about the events, the argument, the woman involved. Then he paused. "And may I ask, what do you do for a living?" I looked at him. "Right now," I said calmly, "I'm just a husband trying to make sure his family survives." He nodded, sensing there was more. Later, I learned Karen was already telling her version. She claimed she felt threatened. She claimed authority. She claimed stress. Not once did she acknowledge my wife's condition. Not once did she show regret. As I finally sat beside Aisha's hospital bed, watching her sleep, something inside me changed. This wasn't just about us anymore. This was about abuse of power. About entitlement. About how easily cruelty hides behind rules. And for the first time since the incident, I allowed myself to think beyond fear. Justice would come. Hospitals never truly sleep. Machines beep softly. Footsteps echo down endless corridors. Time feels frozen. I sat beside Aisha's bed, watching her chest rise and fall. Every breath she took felt like a small victory. She opened her eyes slowly. "You're here," she whispered. "Always," I replied, squeezing her hand gently. Her fingers trembled. "Is the baby okay?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady even though my heart wasn't. "You're both safe." She closed her eyes again, exhausted. But I couldn't rest. Outside her room, doctors spoke in hushed tones. "She was lucky," one said. Any deeper, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Those words echoed in my head. Lucky. Luck should never be the reason a pregnant woman survives her own front porch. By morning, the hospital corridor outside Aisha's room had changed. 2 uniformed officers stood near the door. A senior detective reviewed notes on a tablet. This wasn't routine anymore. The detective introduced himself. "Sir, we're reopening the incident as an aggravated assault," he said. "There are witnesses. Video footage. Multiple statements." I nodded. "What about the woman?" I asked. "She's in custody," he replied. "And she's being difficult." That didn't surprise me. Karen refused to cooperate. She demanded special treatment, threatened lawsuits, accused the police of bias. "This is harassment," she insisted. I was doing my job. Her confidence was unshaken, at least on the surface. She still believed the system would protect her. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Emails flooded residents' inboxes. "We do not condone violence. This was an isolated incident. Please respect the investigation." But fear had already spread. People who had stayed silent for years suddenly spoke up. Complaints poured in. Old warnings resurfaced. Stories of intimidation came out. Karen wasn't an exception. She was a symptom. That afternoon, the hospital director requested a private meeting. He looked nervous. "Sir, there's been a call," he said carefully. "From the secretariat." I already knew what that meant. "They want to know if you're comfortable," he added. I stood up slowly. "Tell them I'll call back," I said. He swallowed hard and nodded. I stepped into an empty stairwell and made the call. Within seconds, familiar voices filled the line. Security updates, legal briefings, media containment strategies. I listened silently. Then I spoke. "No press," I said firmly. "No interference. This case proceeds exactly like any other." There was a pause. "Yes, sir," came the reply. Back in the hospital room, Aisha looked at me carefully. "You're being very calm," she said softly. I smiled gently. "I need to be," I replied. She studied my face. "You're not telling me something." "Not yet," I said. "But I promise. I will." She nodded, trusting me completely. That trust mattered more than any title. At the station, Karen overheard a conversation. "Special oversight," an officer whispered. "Higher authorities involved." Karen laughed at first. "They always get dramatic," she scoffed. But when she heard my name mentioned quietly, something shifted. She demanded to see her lawyer again. This time, she wasn't yelling. She was shaking. Her lawyer arrived late that night. He had already reviewed the evidence. Witnesses, footage, medical reports. "This is bad," he said bluntly. Karen snapped, "You're supposed to defend me." "I can," he replied. "But only if you start telling the truth." She went silent. By the next day, rumors spread through the neighborhood. People whispered about influence, about the hospital lockdown, about the unusual speed of the investigation. Karen's name became toxic. Parents warned their children. Neighbors avoided eye contact with her house. Fear had changed sides. Despite everything, Aisha surprised me. She asked to sit up. She asked about the investigation. "She hurt me," she said quietly. "But she hurt a lot of people before me." Her words stayed with me. "This can't end with just punishment," she added. "It has to mean something." I nodded. It would. The prosecutor filed multiple charges: aggravated assault, endangerment of an unborn child, abuse of authority. Karen's bail was denied. Her lawyer didn't argue. Late that night, I received a request. Karen wanted to meet me. Privately. I considered it carefully. Then I agreed. They brought her into a small room. No clipboard. No confidence. She looked smaller now. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "I swear I didn't know who you were." I looked at her calmly. "That's the problem," I replied. "You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them like a human being." She cried. I didn't respond. As I stood to leave, she asked in a trembling voice, Who are you?" I paused at the door. "You'll find out soon," I said quietly. Outside, the legal machinery moved fast. Judges were assigned. Security arranged. Proceedings scheduled. Karen's world was shrinking. And she still didn't fully understand why. I returned to the hospital, sitting beside Aisha once more. "Is it over?" she asked. "No," I said gently. "But it's about to be." The morning of the trial arrived quietly. Too quietly. I stood by the hospital window, watching the city wake up. Traffic moved. Shops opened. Life continued as if nothing had happened. Aisha sat on the bed behind me, wrapped in a light shawl. "Are you ready?" she asked. I turned to her. "As ready as anyone can be," I replied. She smiled faintly. "Whatever happens today," she said, "we face it together." I nodded. Always. The courthouse buzzed with tension. Security was tighter than usual. Whispers followed every step. Karen arrived with her lawyer, head down, confidence gone. She avoided looking at the spectators. Then she saw us. Her eyes widened slightly, fear flashing across her face before she looked away. She still didn't know. "All rise." The courtroom stood as the judge entered. The air felt heavy. Karen's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the table. The judge glanced over the case file, then looked up. "This court will hear the matter of aggravated assault and abuse of authority," he said firmly. The trial began. The prosecutor stood calmly. "This case," he began, "is not about rules. It is about power abused and humanity ignored." He described the incident clearly, without exaggeration. A pregnant woman. A front porch. A confrontation that never should have escalated. Karen stared at the table. One by one, witnesses took the stand. Neighbors described Karen's behavior over the years. "She loved control," one said. "She scared people," another admitted. "She always said rules mattered more than feelings." Then came the paramedic. "She was in shock," he said. "Both physically and emotionally." The courtroom was silent. A senior doctor testified next. "The patient and unborn child were both at risk," he explained. "Any delay could have resulted in tragedy." Karen's lawyer shifted uneasily. Facts were not on their side. When it was time for Karen's defense, her lawyer tried to argue stress and misunderstanding. "She felt threatened," he said. The judge raised an eyebrow. "By a pregnant woman?" he asked sharply. The argument collapsed. Against her lawyer's advice, Karen chose to speak. "I was enforcing the rules," she said weakly. "I didn't mean for things to go that far." The prosecutor stood. "Did you know she was pregnant?" Karen hesitated. "Yes." "And you still escalated?" Silence. The judge leaned forward. "Before we proceed to closing statements," he said, "I would like clarification regarding one matter." He looked directly at me. "Sir, would you please state your name for the record?" I stood. The courtroom watched. "My name," I said calmly, "is." I paused. "I am the chief minister of this state." The room froze. Karen's head snapped up. Her face drained of color. Whispers erupted. Karen's lawyer closed his eyes. Karen's lips trembled. You didn't say," she stammered. I looked at her steadily. "Because it shouldn't have mattered," I said. "You don't get to choose who deserves safety based on status." The prosecutor spoke one last time. "This case proves why unchecked authority is dangerous," he said. "Justice must protect everyone, especially the vulnerable." Karen said nothing. She couldn't. The judge spoke slowly and clearly. "This court finds the defendant guilty on all counts." A gasp rippled through the room. Karen collapsed into her chair. The sentence followed, firm, decisive, final. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. I gave no statement. Justice didn't need commentary. The HOA was dissolved within weeks. New regulations were passed, protecting residents from abuse disguised as authority. Months later, we returned home. The porch looked the same. But everything felt different. Aisha rested on the couch, holding our newborn child. Healthy. Safe. Alive. I watched them quietly. Aisha looked up at me. "Do you regret staying quiet for so long?" she asked. I shook my head. "No," I said. "Because now the system learns something important." "What?" "That power doesn't define humanity," I replied. "Choice does. Rules exist to protect people, not control them. Authority exists to serve, not dominate." She thought she was powerful because she enforced rules. She learned the truth too late. Power without compassion is just cruelty wearing a badge.